talk a little bit about what we're here for today. All right, NorthWestern Energy presents our IRP, which is a 20-year plan, and we do this every 3 years. It's kind of weird. We do a 20-year plan and then revise it every 3 years. But hey, that's what happens in energy. It changes all the time. And then what we do is we take public comment. We refine it. This is just a draft IRP at this point. We're going to refine our IRP, and then we're going to present it to the Montana PSC sometime in April of 2026. We will listen to comments, look at the energy generation options going forward, continue to evaluate the investments, longevity, and ongoing costs. The IRP is not a construction plan. Just remember that. Or a final decision document. It establishes a transparent analysis of possible scenarios to guide the future actions that we take. To set up tonight, here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be certainly having public comment, but before we do that, we're going to have a 20 to 25 minute presentation on the IRP by our gentleman over here, Mr. John Schaefer, who I'll introduce here in a second. One thing I need to let you know, we will not be answering questions. This is not, we are not here for a debate. We're here for comments so that we can listen to what the community says, take that into consideration for our IRP. If you have comments that you are unable to make, because we will shut this down at 7:30, because we have to, we got to be out of here by 8. So 7:30, we will be shutting this down. And if you don't have a chance to get up here and make a comment, that's why we want to get it started this quick. We do have IRP at northwestern.com. That is our email to hand in a comment, or you can go to our website, and there's a form on there to make a comment as well. We will record this session so that we get all the information as fully as we can. And with that, let me tell you what we're going to be doing during the comment period. All right, so just guidelines for the comment period. Again, we will be recording. Comment only, no questions, although your comment can be a question. But we won't have time today to answer those. But keep in mind that the comment period is meant for you to voice your opinions, and so that we can understand your view on the IRP before we submit to the PSC. When it's your turn to comment, you're going to have 3 minutes to make a comment. Tanner Kump over here, who is our community relations specialist, he is going to time for us, and then when you're at a minute left, he will hold up a 1, and then when the 3 minutes is up, he'll hold up a 0, and then we'll ask you to move and let the next person come up and speak. Okay? And we'll get through these as quick as we can. When you make your comments, could you please state your name and organization that you are with, just so we can make a note with that. Okay? I will review all of this stuff right before we do the comment session as well. All right, so why don't we get to the presentation so we can have more time for comments. Let me introduce John Schaefer, who is an electrical engineer and MBA who grew up in Billings, Montana, joined NorthWestern Energy in 2013, and during his tenure advanced into leadership roles, including serving as manager of innovation, where he continued his work to develop and launch early-stage and large-scale initiatives across the company, including early distribution of SCADA deployment, community solar projects like in Bozeman and in Missoula, microgrids, LED streetlight conversion, and deployment of our advanced metering infrastructure, the AMI meters. In July 24, John transitioned into a current role as manager of energy supply planning, leading the 3-person team responsible for integrating resource planning in both Montana and South Dakota with a focus on reliability, affordability, and sustainability, as well as oversight of qualifying facilities, avoided cost calculations, and all source RFPs for capacity. Sounds like some job. All right, let me introduce you to John Schaefer. John.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it, Todd. It's been a year, and figuring it out. But again, Todd said it well. I'm going to move your notes here.
You got it.
So I can hit over on the slides. But, first of all, thanks for being here. It's a time out of your night. It's an important topic. And everybody kind of looks at things a little bit differently, and I appreciate that. I think there's quite a few people in this room that has been part of this process. And we continue to have pretty in-depth conversations on a lot of different perspectives: affordability, reliability, risks, climate and clean energy. Do we build things locally, and how does transmission fit into the picture? And they're all valid, perspectives, and they're all worth discussing. So Todd kind of took some of this, but just to kind of continue setting the stage, what is this integrated resource plan? And really, I just want to clarify, we're not setting rates. We're not trying to come up with rates. We're not trying to lock into a single path. We're not looking at a specific technology for construction. We're not trying to do a specific project with the IRP. It's really just like a planning and modeling exercise. It's something we do every 3 years. We use a regional reliability program that I'll talk about. And we're trying to solve for this lowest cost of capacity, meaning, is it there when we need it, across scenarios with constraints. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. Not that simple. There's a lot to it. But, overall, we're trying to meet this regional reliability. It's not just us. It's the whole region. And we're trying to balance that affordability and sustainability discussion. Part of this process has been this Electric Technical Advisory Committee, and it has members from the PSC and EAQ on that. And we've had a customer stakeholder group that included the environmental groups over this past year, and large load people and other experts in the field, part of the stakeholder group. And again, this is the kickoff for that public process. So, reliability. What are we really trying to achieve here? What does that even mean? This term about reliability, and really, this area you see in yellow. This is called the Mid-Sea area. There's this regional program called the Western Resource Adequacy Program, and they're trying to engineer a solution that meets this reliability standard. And it's high level. It's one shortfall in 10 years. That's a reliability metric they're trying to meet. And that's for the region. And that is, do we have enough resources in that region to meet that region's peak? And that's what we're participating in. And what do they do, and how do they help us in this analysis? They help us determine how do our resources perform during the hours we need them to perform. I know there's a lot of energy resources, but do they perform when we need it? How do we look at that? How are we keeping the lights on? And they look at it from a summer perspective and a winter perspective. And in Montana, we still have these multi-day cold winter events, in the past 5 years. And so that's still what our team is tasked with solving, is how do we get reliability to our customers through these multi-day winter events. So where do we sit today? This is kind of a chart. There's a few different lines on this chart. The top black line is a load plus a planning reserve margin. The dashed line is our peak load forecast. Our load is slowly growing. We have this little ramp because, is it quiet? Can you guys hear me, or do I need to talk louder? Talk louder. I'll use the mic. So, is it better? All right. So, what does this mean? So we have the load, we have this little ramp up, and that's part of partaking with the RAP program. And then we have this little buffer, a planning reserve margin. That's kind of the safety net, so to speak. And where we're starting out this year is we have a reliable portfolio. You can see about 60% is made from firm-fueled resources. And what do I mean by that? That means that fuel is available, and we kind of turn it on like a light switch, right? That's available to be on during multi-day cold winter events. And then we have renewable resources, which still is a large part of our portfolio, and that's weather dependent. You think it should perform this way, but it really depends on how the weather operates. And then we have capacity contracts as well, short-term capacity contracts to help use the regional resources to meet our reliability. And so that's kind of the near term. And then as we lose those capacity contracts, we start seeing a need in the buffer area, the planning reserve margin. We start seeing a need there. And then when we start going over past 2040, our resources are aging, and so there's a replacement need. And so as those resources are retiring, this plan is looking at how do we replace those resources. And so just to note, too, the recent additions of YCGS, the Yellowstone County Generation Station, and the additional shares of Colstrip, the Vista shares, that's 222 megawatts of Vista and 175 megawatts for the Yellowstone County Generation Station in Laurel, Montana. That is what brought us to be reliable. The cool thing is, now we kind of say, hey, we made it here. Let's plan out that future. The next thing is, this is a model, but what is that model trying to solve? How do we simplify this? Really, it's like building a home, so to speak. It's the customer cost. It's how much does that home cost? You got taxes. You got to maintain that home. And so we have a whole bunch of predictions of how much that resource is going to cost, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's a natural gas facility. We put all of those costs into this model and come up with the customer cost. Then this model also predicts, what the market's going to be in the future, has assumptions in the market. And what it's doing in each one of these resources, it's figuring out how much energy it's going to sell based on that market forecast. And that energy, the way this works is energy sales minus the operating costs is revenue. And that revenue is credited back to customers. That's something NorthWestern Energy doesn't hold on to. It's credited back to customers. So that net cost is the customer cost. That's what the model's trying to solve. And then we're simply looking, kind of dividing it. How is that resource showing up when you need it? So if you had a 100 megawatt nameplate, how much of that nameplate, what percent of that nameplate is showing up during the coldest winter time? And from that, we're getting this cost per reliable capacity. And so all resources are evaluated that same way. The accreditation piece, RAP, our regional participant, is performing a lot of our accreditation for our resources. And so that's what we're leveraging. So again, I mentioned that this is a modeling exercise, and we're not trying to design a single feature here, right? We're just trying to come up with cases to understand what's the trade-offs. And so we have a base case, which is just basically trying to say, hey, our fleet has an operating life, it has a book life. We have capacity contracts with end dates, and all we're trying to do is how does that resource perform and what needs to be backfilled in that portfolio if things operate towards that book life. That's just the base case. And then we have a lot of scenarios around Colstrip. What happens when Colstrip retires early? What does that do to costs and emissions? So we got a whole bunch of retirement cases. We got a baghouse requirement that was just looked at. What would that do if some EPA rules went into effect? We also looked at, what if we didn't get that Avista share? We'd have to build more resources to be reliable. What does that look like? What does that do to cost? What if we had more shares of Colstrip? What does that look like? We looked at data center growth. I know that's a hot topic. There is a good fact sheet that just came out today on data center growth that's out there, but we looked at it just from a resource adequacy. We're not trying to get into rates or tariffs of who pays. Just if you had this load come online, what would that whole portfolio look like? How would we meet reliability in that portfolio? And so you've got several different growth scenarios. We've got then emission scenarios where what happens if we just didn't have fossil fuel resources? And again, every time we're putting constraint, that model's trying to meet that need at the lowest cost of capacity. That's what the model's trying to solve. And then what happens, I have some constraints over here. One is we put in most of the cases is no additional fossil fuel resources after 2035 as part of our current net zero goal by 2050. But we do need that technology to be available to you. I just want to put that in there.
And so in that scenario for emissions, we also removed that constraint to say, what does that feature look like? And then we looked at transmission. There's a transmission line that runs from Colstrip to North Dakota called the Northern Plains Connector. We're looking at about 300 megawatt of capacity on that line. And for this study, we looked at it from an energy perspective, the energy value. There's a market over here on the west. There's actually two markets in North Dakota that it would connect to. How does that energy price benefit our customers? What's the price differential if those connections never occurred to what happens if you could connect them? And so we looked at that in this plan. And then we also looked at ESM, decided demand side management, which is your energy efficiency programs. But what happens if we increase those programs? And what happens if we increase net metering? And what is the value that provides from those increase of those programs? We didn't look at cost for those programs because there's also a cost side. That still needs to be looked at, but we did look at the value side. And again, we're testing constraints. I already talked about the no additional fossil fuels. Storage limits. As we look for grid charge storage, we put a limit on that. If you think about it, you got to charge that during the night. We're trying to have a reliability resource. And so there's only so much before you're creating a night peak because you don't have enough capacity to actually charge it, to meet the following day. And so there's kind of a limit there. And so we limited storage to 250 megawatts, about a little over a quarter, a third of our overall peak capacity today. And then we also looked at long duration storage. And long duration storage, we also put a limit on it. Long duration storage is 100-hour duration storage. It's not very efficient, but it's really good to manage through, events, so to speak. And so we did put a limit on that. It's also newer technology. And then from a modeling perspective, a modeling is a piece of software, right? That piece of software also likes to build towards the market. And so we have to put a constraint on overbuild, meaning, our customers don't really need excess capacity, but the model's trying to tell us, it's good to build it because we have a prediction of the market. And so we actually put a constraint on that of 150 megawatts that says, hey, we'll acquire 150 megawatts max up to our need. And then we're going to put a penalty on that. So, we're selecting resources when our customers actually need those resources in the portfolio. So, again, IRPs, just really the takeaway is kind of trying to test all these different scenarios and features. So there's also things learned, right, from these portfolios. No single resource meets reliability alone. It takes a little bit of energy storage appears in all the portfolio results. This firm dispatchable, this light switch approach is still coming up as the lowest cost of capacity. It's critical to meet this winter reliability. Transmission, again, that Northern Plains project, we looked at it, and it provides access to low-cost energy. There's a benefit there. And across some lower cost features, we looked at that data center growth. And if you can use that growth on your existing assets, you have more megawatt hours sold, to pay for those existing assets. So it kind of results in a lower cost per megawatt hour delivered in that portfolio. But once you start getting up to high growth, there's a lot of new infrastructure investments too that need to happen. And just some trade-offs, we're looking at the cost of the portfolio, and there's trade-offs. So, the lower cost futures really try to run those resources as long as we can. Results in lower cost future, but the trade-off is, it results in higher emissions. Then the flip side is the lower emission futures. Again, it's trying to retire things early, but it comes at a cost. And the IRP really dives into the details of that. I'm not going to do that today, but it is the IRP. And we have all these questions that seem to keep popping up, so I thought I put a slide in here just to address them. You know, our accreditation method's biased. You know, we're using this regional program. We're trying to meet reliability needs. And I know there's resources out there that provide a whole bunch of abundant, low-cost energy, but not necessarily meet the reliability needs that we need to meet in Montana. And so this is where the accreditation comes into play, and again, using a regional program to come up with those accreditations. Do we favor gas or nuclear? Again, this kind of results in that accreditation, but we're just trying to solve for the lowest cost of capacity given the constraints. That's what we're trying to solve for in this model. I already discussed this one, but you know, storage is limited, but why? We do model hybrid, so let's charge storage with solar. That's in here. That's being modeled. It does get selected a little bit, a hybrid solution. We don't limit those, but we do limit grid charging storage in our model. Transmission, you know, does transmission count as a reliability resource? Again, if you think of that picture of RAP is trying to make sure we have enough resources, noting imports and exports of that entire region to be reliable. It doesn't matter transmission in that region. And so what we're looking at is the Northern Plains connector is really bringing another region in. So we have asked RAP to look into that. How does that affect our reliability, the planning reserve margins that you're coming up for our region? And then, you know, why are candidate resource costs high? You know, all these costs come from real-world data from projects that are already built, under construction today, or bid within the RFPs, and all costs are higher when you look at actual data across all resources. And then, you know, we get this question too, like, hey, we should be modeling these capacity contracts. And this is a struggle. You know, if you read out there's a new study that's coming out too for the Pacific Northwest that isn't posted yet, but, you know, some of the highlights is there could be a shortage in the Pacific Northwest as early as 2028. And these capacity contracts we have, I'm not sure our ability to actually extend them. I'm not sure what they cost if we could extend them. And I don't have any foundation to include something like that in IRP modeling. Like, I just don't know is the answer of what those costs and if they will be available until that time comes or we go request that. So that's why capacity contracts aren't modeled. Again, I covered a lot of the key findings. You know, we're in a good position today. You know, across model futures, coal strip, retirement generally increases customer costs. Northern Plains Connector provides energy benefits to customers. And large customer growth, you know, can lower this average portfolio cost because you're trying to maximize your assets. But it does require new generation. It requires new transmission. So additional information. This is a 300-page plus technical document. I have to give credit to my team to help put this together. But there's an action plan. You know, where do we go from here? That's in the IRP. It talks about the regional capacity needs. How does the region meet reliability? It talks about, you know, the accreditations of all the resources and how they play into that future. It talks about our emissions, and it does give historic 2024 emissions by every single asset we have. It talks about our power and natural gas price forecast, what's going to happen to energy prices moving forward, and what does that look like? And then we have a whole bunch of data on all these modeled portfolios. What are the emissions of those portfolios? What do they cost? How much energy do they provide? All in the IRP. And so I'm going to stop here. Again, I really appreciate taking the time and learning from you today. We're going to switch over here and start taking comments. But just to point out, there's a lot of information on our website. There's videos so you can learn a little bit more about the integrated resource plan. There's an executive summary that you can read. You have access to all our committee's documents in this plan. And Yeah, with that, there's the website down there. With that, I'm going to transition back over to public comments. Thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, John. All right, in this process, again, we're here for you guys to give your public comments, and just to kind of go over the guidelines here. Again, we are recording. I don't write that fast, so we are recording all the comments. Please, no questions. We don't have the time to answer, especially with the crowd that we've got here, to be able to answer any of the questions. We just don't have that type of time. However, you can make one of your comments a question, and then maybe we can, answer that at a future time. When it's your turn to comment, please just approach. I'll have this mic right here, and you'll have 3 minutes. And if you could just be respectful of everybody else's time. We will try to keep this going as quick as we can and get as many comments as possible. Again, Tanner Kump over here is going to be putting up a 1 minute mark. He'll be our timer, tell you when you got a minute left and when the 3 minutes is up. Let's see. If we run out of time, just a reminder, IRP at NorthWestern.com is a place you can also make a comment at. So please write that down. And then also visit NorthWesternEnergy.com at the About Us, Gas Electric, Montana Electric Supply Planning. That's where you'll find the IRP. Also, one last thing, one comment per person. Just again, if we have multiple comments coming from different people, we'll run out of time. And then, we do have some information over there. If you have not gotten it, please feel free to pick that up. All right. Well, I guess we'll go into public comment, and if we could have an orderly line made right there at the podium, and we'll go one by one. All right. And when you get up to the podium, if you could again tell us your name, and if you have an organization that you're with, we would love to hear that too. All right. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Before my time starts for my testimony, I'd like to just suggest that for a document that's over 300 pages long, and you guys took 20 to 25 minutes to explain some of it, and you're giving each of us 3 minutes, it might be nice to consider giving us more time and lessening some of your time so we can give you our full comments. Tonight I will restrict my comments to 3 minutes, but I'll put my whole testimony into the record. Thank you. What happened to renewables? Good evening. My name is Jim Parker. I'm a NorthWestern Energy captured ratepayer, and on the leadership team of 350 Montana. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about NorthWestern Energy's plan to provide electricity to Montana's captured ratepayers for the next 20 years. While I appreciate the blue-collar workers at NorthWestern Energy who keep the lights on day after day, I continue to be deeply distressed by the white-collar suits that use smoke and mirrors with Montana ratepayers and our regulators at the Montana Public Service Commission to pad their own pockets while raising rates for captured ratepayers. This plan promises no measurable new renewables for the next 20 years that would provide the cheapest and cleanest energy for our citizens, yet they harmfully advance expensive and dirty fossil fuel generation instead. Yet NorthWestern Energy's website talks about the goal of carbon-free by 2050. Now we have proof this is just a disingenuous ploy to silence their critics while emptying ratepayers' wallets and wreaking havoc with Montana's world-class environment by continuing a reckless flow of fossil fuel energy that is factually and actually destroying our climate systems. The increased levels of fossil fuel energy use this plan suggests and their climate impacts will likely destroy the top two economic engines for citizens of this glorious state. Agriculture, think droughts, and tourism. No more cold water fisheries, no more glaciers, smoke and megafires, heat extremes, and diminishing winter snow levels. Just look outside on January 28th. It's time for the PSC to step up and step in for Montana ratepayers and say no to NorthWestern Energy's destructive, self-serving plan to increase thermal power and neglect Montana's world-class solar, wind, hydro, and battery storage capacities, the cheapest and safest energy available. This current plan is both irresponsible and, frankly, life-threatening for our citizens and our state. For those old enough to remember the 1997 deregulation fiasco by Montana Power, beware. Ratepayers may yet again be left paying for these egregiously bad decisions if allowed. Of course, the elephant in the room is the current proposed merger with Black Hills Energy, another thermal-based utility. This merger, which appears to be all about serving new data centers for AI advancement, will reduce NorthWestern Energy's percentage of renewables in their portfolio from about 55% down to just 16%. Recently, Montana ratepayers have seen huge increases in our energy bills, increases of over 25% and more in the last couple of years. This proposed plan ensures our rates will continue to rise and ratepayers will pay more and more. Lastly, NorthWestern Energy states that when Colstrip is retired around 2045, they'll pivot to nuclear-generated power. This is not renewable. It's not safe. There's no safe storage for waste. It's untested, and it's very expensive with extremely long build-out times. Please do not invest even $1 of our ratepayer money into nuclear power options. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak.
Good evening. My name is Ben Catton. I'm a policy associate at the Montana Environmental Information Center, and I'm here tonight both in my professional capacity and as a Missoula resident to share concerns about this IRP. MEIC, in partnership with other community nonprofits, recently hosted a series of public panel discussions on data center development across Montana. Between Butte, Great Falls, Billings, and Broadview, over 500 residents turned out to ask questions and express concerns. These turnouts make one thing unmistakably clear: the public is hungry for basic, accessible information about how data centers affect Montana's most essential resources. Right now, that information is largely hidden. This lack of transparency reflects an unfortunate status quo secrecy around data center development. The letters of intent between NorthWestern Energy and the 3 data center companies it intends to serve are almost entirely redacted. The public deserves access to this information to understand how these commitments are shaping decisions that will affect rates, grid reliability, and our environment for generations to come. These letters of intent should be included as an appendix to the IRP. The public also deserves clarity on whether and how NorthWestern is already acting on them. For example, is NorthWestern currently serving power to Atlas Power Group, as it indicated it would beginning on the 1st of this month? For months, NorthWestern has told the PSC that it would bring forward a proposal for large load tariffs, critical regulatory protections to prevent residential customers from subsidizing data centers. When will that proposal be submitted? In Butte, public engagement recently helped persuade the Butte Silverboat Council of Commissioners to vote 10-0 to send a letter urging the PSC to protect Montana families and businesses by ensuring that big tech's data centers pay their own way. Residents have been clear. They want comprehensive large load tariffs and a distinct rate class for data centers. The law is equally clear. New large load customers can only be approved if it can be demonstrated that they will not cause long-term harm to existing customers. The public does not believe the industry sales pitch that adding enormous demand lowers costs. Yet NorthWestern Energy appears to be rolling out the red carpet for data centers, while dragging its feet on demonstrating compliance with that statute. In the recently announced merger between NorthWestern and Black Hills, the companies highlighted a shared priority of serving large load customers, in other words, data centers. Montana families and small businesses do not share this priority. Montana is living through unprecedented times: wildfires, drought, and seasonal flooding, damaging windstorms. Those are all becoming more frequent. As a major emitter of greenhouse gases and a steward of the communities and landscapes it serves, NorthWestern cannot abdicate responsibility. The company has a net zero emissions by 2050 goal, yet climate change is mentioned only once in the 2026 IRP. Worse, the limited carbon analysis included at the end of the report shows that if NorthWestern follows through on serving all the data centers it has committed to, its emissions would not decline, but would instead roughly double over the next 2 decades. This failure to meaningfully account for the climate impacts is especially troubling given the scale of investment NorthWestern is planning to meet data center demand. The company has already signed letters of intent for more data center load than is contemplated in its highest growth scenario, rendering those scenarios misleading. NorthWestern must expand its load forecasting to include higher data center growth scenarios that actually reflect its intent and broaden its analysis to consider not just energy supply, but affordability, greenhouse gas emissions, water use, and air pollution. At a minimum, the company must demonstrate robust, transparent planning before bringing massive new data center loads online.
One thing, please try to keep this to 3 minutes. I know it's tough, but if we could, thank you.
Is there something wrong with that mic, or are the people using it incorrectly? Because it's pretty garbled.
So I would say if you could just hold it up right in front of your, try it right now.
Give this a try. My name is Harold Hoem, H-O-E-M, and I'm a native of Butte and 20-year resident of Missoula. I'm a member of Montana Elders for a Livable Tomorrow in the LT. I understand that the current IRP is supposed to provide a forward-looking framework to guide how NorthWestern Energy will meet customer needs over the next 20 years. I am a residential customer and have the following concerns about this IRP. The executive summary 1.9, capacity need and portfolio evaluation, is lacking in clarity. It behooves customers to say nothing with the PSC regulators to understand what's coming down the pike. We are left to assume that wind energy will be chucked by 2044 and solar energy vastly diminished, getting rid of some of the cheapest and cleanest resources and replacing them with hugely expensive and experimental small nuclear reactors. So much for affordability for ratepayers. As a customer, I would like to see a utility with a safer, healthier energy portfolio. Why undervalue renewables such as wind and solar when they have no associated fuel costs, unlike coal, nuclear, and gas? Montana has ample wind and solar readily available. Furthermore, I would like to see a utility that plans for the following. First, is to be up to date on climate issues, largely ignored in this IRP. Montana is already vulnerable to drought, floods, and extreme weather events. Remember that there is a constitutional obligation to maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment, including a stable climate. As a former EMT in a rural area, I have seen the life and death consequences of acute asthma attacks. Air pollution contributes to increasing asthma incidence in Montana. Second, the IRP should explain with candor the motivation justifying the choice of portfolio options. Third, the plan should accurately report plant by plant generation greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like to be a happy customer. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jan Holm, H-O-E-M. I was a former teacher in a rural EMT, and I'm a member of MEIC. I'm reading my letter that was published in the Missoulian last month, titled, Response to NorthWestern Energy's President and CEO, Brian Bird. Mr. Bird, I read your article with dismay, seeing how you selectively describe the virtues of increasing your investment in fossil fuels to produce energy for your customers. Your shareholders are the primary beneficiaries, not us. For years, NorthWestern Energy has dragged its feet in terms of investing in clean energy in any major way. Opportunities like the high-producing wind farm at Judith Gap were snatched by out-of-state companies because you didn't act. Montana must now be near the bottom of the heap in terms of developing future energy independence. This will cost us dearly in terms of health impacts, especially for those living close to railroads and coal mines. It looks like gross mismanagement to me. Your customers have paid at least twice for your much-touted hydropower, but you've made scant movement to low-cost wind, solar, or pumped hydro. There are a host of reasons why NorthWestern Energy should make the change rapidly, not the least of which are Montanans' skyrocketing electricity bills. We all know that the Earth's resources are finite, including clean air and water. Coal, which you consider a resource, is a polluter that should be left in the ground. Make it a gift to our children. Many generations will follow us, and we can be the people who turn things around or the ones who let them down. You're in a position to make the right choice for all of us. Thank you for listening to us.
So thank you for coming to Missoula and giving us this chance to comment. And thank all of you for being here. It's a great showing. My name is Gary Matson. I'm a science advisor for Friends of Two Rivers. It's a conservation organization in Barnville County. The 2026 Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, must include an estimate of potential charge changes in electricity rates for residential ratepayers. How would these rates change under the scenarios described in the IRP? The IRP completely ignores the international consensus among climate scientists that greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel combustion are degrading our climate. The resulting financial, physical, and health costs borne by citizens and their governments are intolerably large and increasing. NorthWestern's decision makers have denied the utility's role in climate change. They must end this blind, baseless denial and recognize the responsibility to cease greenhouse gas emissions from its generation resources at the earliest possible time. NorthWestern completely ignores the extremely large and growing social cost of carbon emissions that are causing climate change. Citing a lack of state policy or regulations requiring consideration of the costs have been thoroughly researched and estimated by economists and should be acknowledged in the IRP. The IRP does not give adequate consideration to hybrid wind and solar generation, that is, the utilization of battery storage with wind and solar. The capacity of hybrid renewables, especially with long duration battery storage, is much greater than that of renewables without storage. Full consideration of these resources would markedly reduce the forecast need for generation by fossil fuels. The IRP gives appropriate recognition for emerging technologies, and hopefully these can be assimilated into utilities' generation portfolio at the earliest possible time. Enhanced geothermal generation is rapidly evolving in feasibility, along with hydrogen and its incorporation into fuel cells. The nuclear generation seen in the IRP as a major resource in 2043 carries unsolvable problems with nuclear waste disposal. Enhanced geothermal could provide the same generation resource. Its fuel is inexhaustible and it will be clean, lacking emissions. I recognize the complexity of the considerations comprising the 2026 IRP and commend the overall effort. It will be a more useful document if its flaws and emissions can be remedied. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Sweet. Let me just pull it up. So my name is Bryn. I'm just a little guy. So before moving to Montana in 2018, I resided in Vermont, a state that's a model for proficiency as it relates to the environment. And I speak from experience working with 350.org, a global environmental justice nonprofit, working on the leadership committee with the Vermont sector. And as someone who deeply is passionate about access to clean energy, along with being in the outdoors. This plan is inherently flawed. It is a disgrace to Montanans. Cutting costs to prioritize fossil fuel resources only to still cause rising costs to your customers hurts the environment and the wallets of your customers. When we allow ugly billboards to cover our beautiful landscapes, but don't prioritize clean energy solutions like solar and wind, it shows one's priorities quite evidently. I see that there were concerns from tribes listed in the plan, and the response by your company was that they didn't participate in the process, which I doubt was on purpose and was actually a huge oversight on your company's efforts to make tribes' ability to assert their First Amendment rights possible. After all, this land is not ours. In general, this plan is full of a lot of bureaucratic fluff dressed as transparency. It feels more like it focuses more on business than it does catering to the customers and the earth that you say are the heart of everything that you do. Please revise this plan immediately, and instead of focusing on technical language, center science into everything this plan entails. Climate change is real, and you have a chance to show your passion for conservation efforts, along with ensuring Montanans are able to have power in their homes. It causes a ripple effect when lack of access to energy happens, where folks can't keep their fridge running and their food goes bad. Then we see vital programs that are supposed to help with utility costs, and are either getting cut or getting overloaded with applications. Families in Montanans as a whole are left to make the impossible choice. Do we keep the light on, or am I better off just keeping myself in the dark, as society has already been doing in terms of my transparency of my priorities and making sure I have food on the table and to keep the line on for everybody else. Don't be cold to humanity. Be warm to Montanans wanting to take better care of the earth. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your patience with my little kid.
Good evening. My name is Patty Ames. This is on.
It is on, yeah.
My late friend Leroy Shelley used to say, the energy executives have money in their pockets and larceny in their hearts. And we know that the huge sums of money that have lined their coffers with have come from us middle and low income NorthWestern Energy ratepayers. Once again, NorthWestern Energy has cherry-picked, chosen, and manipulated the assumptions and inputs into your 2026 modeling, just as you have in previous years. We clearly understand that you want to use the most costly forms of energy production because you and the shareholders gain a 10% return for your investments. We understand that when you choose to buy more shares of Colstrip, which will need millions of dollars in updates and repairs, you will gain far more income than if you chose cheaper, more efficient, cleaner solar and wind energy and with battery storage. We understand that our energy bills have gone up over 24% in the last couple of years because you choose the most costly coal and gas energy that you possibly can. We know that when John Hines says his famous line, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, that he is vying for an Academy Award for the best performance by a dramatic actor. We know that Colstrip only functions 51% of the time when it's the coldest outside and we need it the most. We know that then you have to buy very expensive energy off the market, which again, we, the ratepayers, are stuck paying for. You get the money and we get the shaft. I have two quotes to close with. Upton Quincer wrote, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it." From After the Deluge by Jackson Brown. Some of them were angry at the way the earth was abused by the men who learned how to forge her beauty into power, and they struggled to protect her from them, only to be confused by the magnitude of the fury in the final hour. Thank you.
Real quick. If you have notes that you would like to hand to us to put in the comments, we'd be happy to take those. So just so you know, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Lundquist. I'm the Executive Director of Families for a Livable Climate. And I'm speaking both on my own behalf as a parent and on behalf of the hundreds of Montana families we serve. We want to make it clear that we want clean power and a future where our children can thrive. This IRP does not seriously address climate change as a planning priority. Climate is barely referenced, and there's no clear pathway in this plan toward NorthWestern's own stated goal of net zero emissions, much less the constitutional right Montanans have to a clean and healthful environment, including a stable climate system as affirmed by Montana courts in Health v. Montana. Families are also troubled that this plan continues to lean heavily on coal and gas resources, including ongoing reliance on the coal strip plant, without robust analysis of community health impacts from air pollution or a credible transition strategy toward cleaner options. Independent reviewers have raised concerns that the modeling undervalues wind, solar, and storage and unnecessarily caps how much storage can be deployed, effectively stacking the deck in favor of fossil fuel generation rather than least cost clean resources. This draft also underutilizes energy efficiency and demand-side solutions. Helping people reduce energy use, especially during peak periods and across the year, is one of the most cost-effective ways to cut bills and emissions, and it's something that all of the Montana families I interact with want in order to reduce their own costs. Yet the plan proposes modest targets that fall short of what Montanans need and what other regions are achieving with regard to efficiency and conservation programs. Montana families want an energy future that is clean, affordable, and resilient. That means prioritizing renewables and storage without artificial barriers, strengthening efficiency and demand response, and aligning this plan with both economic realities and our constitutional obligations. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Smith. I'm from Missoula. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist and researcher in the area of the effects of air pollution on childhood lung disease. So I guess if I'm representing anybody, it's children. My concerns are several. First, the plan that's being presented is a plan that continues a major reliance on energy production from fossil fuels. And so for the next 20 years, there's no plan for use of clean renewable energy. This is hugely contrary to the state directives that energy production is the most cost-effective means, both in the short and long term. In the short term, energy production from renewable sources is cheaper and more cost-efficient. The state also mandates that energy production should be from diverse sources, and this plan describes continued narrow-scope use of coal and gas. Not knowing what the cost of these fuels will be in the future puts our state at considerable risk of steadily increasing costs. The state also specifies that societal costs be considered, and they are not. There is no doubt that air pollution from burning fossil fuels, especially coal, increases the incidence and severity of childhood lung diseases, including asthma and lung infections. The cost of health care for this single segment of society are both immediate with increased cost of medication and health care visits. There are also costs to the family in terms of loss of work hours and productivity. In the long term, there's an increased cost to society by way of shortened lives from chronic lung diseases acquired in childhood. Asthma acquired during childhood carries over into adult. Conditions such as COPD and chronic bronchitis also decrease the quality and duration of life. Instead of these costs being considered, They are to be externalized to the public and away from the companies that profit. The societal costs from climate change are also significant and are already being felt. Increased wildland fires, heat-related illnesses, and energy consumptions are steadily increasing. The future societal cost of climate change simply can't be dismissed. It's clear that CO2 is a contributor to climate change and that fossil fuel consumption is costing society in this manner as well.
Hello, my name is Bob Bestez. I'm a Missoula resident and a retired physical chemist. I'd like to comment on one of the important topics that need to be addressed in your 20-year plan. And no, it's not about climate change. I don't want to make light of climate change. It's the central issue of our times. But others are discussing it tonight with you, so I will skip that one. I will only mention, with respect to climate change, a glaring omission in your draft plan about the costs of climate change. That's found on pages 17 and 42 of the document. These pages contain a rather cavalier remark that Montana's cool climate is the selling point for attracting data centers to the area. At minimum, you need to qualify that remark by clearly stating that Montana's climate has indeed been cool in the past, but reliable data available today show it is now warming at an alarming rate, I might add. The topic really I want to focus on is the health effects of power generation. This topic is not addressed in the current 20-year plan, but it needs to be, as health effects of power generation will have significant consequences for NorthWestern's future profits, its liability exposure, and the well-being of its customers. There are numerous health effects associated with power generation. Due to time constraints, I will highlight just one of them. The health burden from exposure to fine particulate matter, known as PM 2.5. This term refers to particles with a diameter of 2.5 microns or less. An authoritative study, peer-reviewed and published in the journal Science, evaluated the mortality risk in the United States resulting from coal electricity generation. The study found that in the 22 years from 1999 to 2020, a total of 460,000 deaths were attributable to PM 2.5 emitted from coal power plants. That's an astounding number. Not 40 to 400 to 4,000 or even 40,000. 460,000. That's a national catastrophe. Most of these deaths occurred in the eastern United States, where coal power generation once dominated. Fortunately, in the last quarter century, coal power generation in the eastern U.S. has dropped significantly. What if the mortality risk hotspot from coal PM 2.5 moved to Montana and the surrounding states? That would be another disaster. The IRP must consider this. There are a number of other health effects from power generation that need consideration. Emission of mercury, arsenic, radionuclides, other topics. Time doesn't permit me to talk about them. But to summarize, health effects of power generation have significant costs. And ignoring health effects would make NorthWestern Energy a poster child of bad capitalism, an example of the adage, privatize profits, socialize risks. I recommend that you carefully and thoroughly evaluate health risks from power generation in the IRP. It's the responsible thing to do. Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Toth. I'm from here in Missoula, and I'm part of the MEIC group also, and I'm here kind of on my own. Like many in this room, I'm a captive ratepayer, and so my utility bill is always a big thing for me, and it means a lot in my household. And my pocketbook But what my real concern is the future of Montana, more than my current pocketbook. And I know that NorthWestern Energy, their actions and the methods they take for producing power in the state have a big effect on what Montana will be in the future. I also understand that NorthWestern Energy has a dual responsibility, not only fiscally to their shareholders, but a moral obligation to keep the lights on with reliable and affordable energy. The reliability concept you talk about in your plan. The most sensible way to actually achieve both of these kind of goals is to keep our power bills lower or low, or not increasing as much, and to provide for the fiscal responsibility you guys have, is to look at the cheapest way there is to produce new power. The least expensive way to build into that power right now are renewables, solar, wind, geothermal. And so it actually achieves both of those goals for the company and us as customers if you look in that direction. I know you use a lot of models in making this plan. And I'd like to make sure that your modeling is done in the correct way, that it's retrospectively looked at over history, that you apply the model like historical times to see if it did a right prediction for the future that happens. But the trouble with any of these models is that the future of those models is in a climate that is much different. You talked about the events of how they keep us all warm in the winter. There might be a certain different event keeping us all trying to get water in the summer. That future of climate change must be included in these models. And I'd like to also make sure that the energy marketplace is looked at all the way to the share markets around the West. Thank you.
Hello, Todd, John, and the timer guy. I'm Monica Trinnell. I'm here on my own behalf. Just a couple of questions, not questions, comments for you to consider. So you said the final IRP is coming out in April, and it would be obsolete if the merger goes through. There are 2 pending motions to dismiss the merger based on a lack of information from NorthWestern and responses to data requests that weren't very complete. So what I would like to see in your IRP as you move forward are modeling it with and without the merger, so we can see, is this NorthWestern's IRP, and is it obsolete with the merger? What commitments continue post-merger in this IRP? Are you committing in this IRP to keep the commitments you have to Missoula through your MOU? What environmental commitments are you going to continue with the IRP with or without the merger? Would like to see all of that modeled clearly and in a way we can understand. And since we are all paying for this, it would be nice to have it be a document we can read and understand. The other thing that I think would be useful in the IRP is modeling it with and without data centers. As I understand the model that is in the draft, you are starting to be short next year without the data centers. So I'd like to see that modeling be for the data centers with them and without them going forward. I guess I would just like to point out in the handout that you have here tonight, there's a statement here that says the vision is to be the energy partner of choice for our customers, communities, and investors. 2 of those 3 groups have no choice by definition. So this is a plan that is a vision for your investors. How does that benefit us who live here in Montana, our communities, our people, our small businesses? So I'd like to see that. And Todd, near and dear to my heart, I'd like to see it modeled, fixing the high-pitched noise from the new gas plant out there. Yep. Thank you.
without the mic?
You can if you'd like.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Andrew Wilcox. I'm a professor of geosciences at the University of Montana. I study and teach about energy systems, climate, and landscapes. And I've reviewed the IRP and have several comments. NorthWestern Energy has 3 planning objectives: reliability, affordability, and sustainability. I'd like to acknowledge that NorthWestern Energy does an outstanding job to date with reliability. They keep all of our lights on. Thank you for that. The IRP leaves some elements to be desired in terms of the other 2 planning objectives, affordability and sustainability. We are living in a time of tremendous energy innovation, dramatic cost reductions in wind, solar, batteries, and geothermal, technological advances to shift demand in a way that curbs peaks, reduces costs, and decarbonizes. Technologies that enhance the efficiency and reliability of the grid-enhancing technologies. None of this is reflected in the IRP, which reads as a 20th century energy system plan focused on centralized, fossil fuel-oriented energy resources, and in a world where climate change is not a concern. So I encourage revision to the IRP that alters assumptions applied to wind, solar, and batteries, which currently vastly undervalue those resources, neglects the sharp cost reductions of those resources in recent years, neglects the increased time duration that we see in battery storage in a way that adds up to very important details in the IRP. Then neglects that Montana has the 3rd largest, best wind capacity in the country. And then neglects that we are now developing technologies and ways to address the variability of renewables in ways that ensure their reliability. I have a couple more specific points to make that haven't been covered. I encourage NorthWestern to phase out the thermal qualifying facilities in this IRP. These are the most expensive and carbon-intensive parts of the portfolio. They represent low-hanging fruit in terms of reducing costs and reducing carbon emissions. The qualifying facility contract for the Yellowstone Energy Limited Partnership expires in 2028. NorthWestern Energy is currently planning to extend that for another 20 years, and I encourage us to revisit that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
We'll try to do a hybrid of projected into the mic. My name is Shanti Devins, and I'm here as a... Two up.
No, you're good.
I'm so good. Okay.
There you go.
I'm here in a personal capacity and also as a mother. I really appreciate the depth of the comments that we heard tonight, and I want to just look a little bit bigger at the big picture. Use the word cost so much. And I just want to talk a little bit about what I love for a second and what's at stake. And I, as a resident of Montana, I love the mountains. I love fishing. I love spring wildflowers. Oh my gosh. I love snow. And these are the reasons I live here, but all of those things are under threat because of climate change. There's been unprecedented floods in western Montana this winter. There was no snow for Christmas for my son. He's about to be 2. We were just talking about this, and he's finally aware of Christmas, and there was no snow for him this year. We've had hotter and drier summers, and we have to act now to protect the places we love, our camping spots, our hunting ranges, our homes. The science is abundant and clear that we must stop polluting our air and water, and we must stop burning fossil fuels. We can't wait 20 years. That is too late. We must all evolve to embrace the cleanest and cheapest forms of energy available in our backyard, solar and wind. My electric bill has never been higher, and it shows me that you're not focused on easing that burden when you look at the comprehensive costs, like many people have talked about, not just the cost of my electric bill, which I'm willing to pay if we are also associating the cost of climate change and our health, like others have spoken to. Livability and affordability are connected and can both be solved by investing in clean energy. So I'm asking you to please include the homegrown energy solutions of wind and solar in the IRP that are far cheaper and faster to scale up for affordability, for our collective health, and to protect the Montana that we love.
Right.
Good evening. My name is Michael Hudson. Thanks for listening to us. Like the last two IRPs, this one claims that increased fossil fuel use will lead to cheaper power. Yet our prices have risen by 40% since 2022. And those increases have followed the expansion of fossil fuel and coal, gas and coal. When will enough be enough? There are over 100 people in this room who have a similar message. Maybe we're right. The rest of this country is expanding wind, solar, and storage at a rate 9 times that of fossil fuels. Let's be honest. The explosion of renewables in Texas, the Dakotas, Iowa, Kansas, Florida is not driven by climate concerns. Their leaders know it is reliable, cheaper, and supports good jobs and economic development. So why not us? Because of Montana's cost-plus system for paying utilities, NorthWestern makes more when they build more expensive infrastructure. So it shouldn't be a surprise that this IRP claims that the best way forward is to build and rely on the most expensive generation options: nuclear, natural gas, and coal. But before discounting this IRP, we should explore the inputs, assumptions, and exclusions in their modeling, and see how they came to the conclusion that is contradicted by the global expansion of renewables. There isn't time to go into the details, but hopefully the PSC will. They should ask, why is combined wind and solar excluded from their modeling? Why really do we put this cap on battery storage? Why do they gloss over the role of demand-side management? Why do they assume in their calculations that the early retirement of Colstrip will lead us paying for a stranded asset for which they have already fully recovered their original investments? Why? If not to lead to the conclusions that they find most profitable. Besides the economics, I'm here because I'm a dad. I care about clean air and water, and I want a livable future for our kids. This 20-year plan ignores the fact that the expanded use of coal and gas will increase airborne lead, mercury, arsenic, and greenhouse gases. This plan does not include a single valid pathway to NorthWestern's own stated net zero goals, nor addresses the deadly impacts of expanding their use of the most toxic power plant in our country. We all want reliable and affordable energy. We all want a healthy future for our kids, all of us. But this plan is going in the wrong direction. It does not have to be this way. We don't have to choose between good jobs, affordability, and a healthy environment. If NorthWestern's leadership would stand with us, that'd be great. If they don't, we need to act, and we need our elected officials to stand up for Montanans, and then we can have the future we want for all of our kids. Thank you.
My name is James Rokosh. I'm a Stevensville resident, NorthWestern the ratepayer. I'm a retired water resource specialist and a former county commissioner from Valley County. General comments on the IRP. I do believe that the model undervalues wind and solar, particularly combined wind and solar. I do believe that the model currently inflates capacity, and I'll speak to that a little more directly in a moment. We've heard from a number of folks that have expressed that it ignores climate change.
Could hold it up just a little bit. There you go.
And I'd like to iterate a little bit on those. In terms of long duration storage capacity needs, they need to be increased in your model. I'm not sure you put constraints on it, but I don't really see the justification for those constraints. And that's certainly a limiting factor in terms of increasing our use and the reliability of solar and wind energies. I wish the plan would focus and iterate more on potential for regional energy transmission and transfers, which provides more flexibility and reliability and probably cheaper energy for the ratepayers overall. Consideration needs to be given to the fact that wind and solar build-out time is much less, 2 years or less in a lot of situations, which is far less time and less cost than either additional coal or nuclear facilities. The IRP ignores climate change. Again, one reference there's no cost of the greenhouse gas emissions by facility, which absolutely needs to be done. You've heard a great deal from other speakers about the social costs that need to be included in your assessments. 8 years ago, I presented the Montana Climate Assessment Summary to NorthWestern in a meeting just like this. I'm pretty disappointed today to find one reference to climate change. So I urge you to utilize the Montana Climate Assessment. And if you look at what transpired in the last 8 years, our temperature data and our data for stream flows is right on. So one other thing that you've not heard about with respect to the retirement of the coal strip plant. You did hear there is an acknowledgement by ratepayers that, in fact, as far as reliability goes, the plant only operates a little more than half the time. Lastly, I would like to submit some information that I would wish for you to consider regarding the reclamation cost of coal strip up the line, and that's the potential for coal ash to actually be a source of rare earth elements. I'm going to give you a reference here that's titled Rare Earth Elements in Coal Fly Ash and Their Potential Recovery. Written in 2024, Rare Earth Elements, Sustainable Recovery, Processing, and Purification. Publication and the website to get that. There is a proposal by the Montana Mining Association now that is looking at legacy mine sites for these rare earth elements. They have written the Environmental Quality Council of Montana has written a letter to the War Department encouraging that, and I really would encourage that you look at that as not only a way to reduce costs to taxpayers and the reclamation coal strip, but also to increase a healthier environment for us all. Thank you.
Good evening. Catalina Deonis, C-A-T-A-L-I-N-A-D-E-O-N-I-S. I'm a Missoula resident. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm an energy communication researcher and teacher. I'm here today as a ratepayer and a Montanan who cares about our neighbors and our well-being. There are many people who have comments about the draft IRP, yet they can't be here tonight. They're just trying to make it as the cost of housing, health insurance, and food continue to rise at shocking levels while struggling to pay for the consequences of NorthWestern Energy's rate hike of 28% in 2023. Tonight, I hope you'll listen to the people who are here today, who are speaking up for and with our fellow neighbors. But more than listen, I ask that you respond by making necessary changes to the draft and the public engagement process. Please don't let these gatherings be a waste of community members' time and labor by creating a facade of public participation that performs a listening exercise of inviting and informing, and then ultimately ignoring our needs as everyday folks and excluding Indigenous peoples. We know that NorthWestern Energy is an investor-owned company and that ratepayers are not the ones who benefit from this arrangement. We have two paths for what Montana's energy future could be. One where we can all flourish, or the other one that the draft IRP maps out, paved by more of the same harmful business-as-usual approach. Having reviewed the draft IRP, I ask that NorthWestern Energy please address the following 4 areas. 1. The draft needs to further research and report on interregional resource sharing, focusing on renewables as a real solution to peak demand times and days rather than building more fossil fuel infrastructure that ratepayers pay for. Also, the data center figures, as we've heard in the IRP, far underestimate the actual amount of electricity needed to power the number of proposed data centers. We can't afford to pay for more NorthWestern Energy's and big tax projects that make investors and CEOs wealthier and us everyday Montanans poor. 2. Solar and wind sources are underdeveloped in the IRP, as we've already heard. The draft needs to be updated to account for the fact that renewables can be introduced far more quickly and less expensively than slow-to-build, costly, and very environmentally harmful fossil fuel and nuclear plants. 3, again, as we've already heard, the mention of climate change is superficial in the IRP and must address and align with Montana's constitution and the right to a healthy environment. I also would add there's no mention of just transition. There must be pathways for folks to transition to jobs that are good and well-paying, that support renewables, and that are also good for the planet. The jobs versus the environment dichotomy serves no one except wealthy investors and corporations. 4, please continue to move toward greater transparency and public participation, including by offering public comment sessions online for those who cannot travel. As ratepayers, we've witnessed long-standing and recent attempts to increase our bills to fund projects without our consent. The current IRP cements the path of having the wealthy few exert their powerful influence while harming everyday Montanans, as so many people and families are forced into making impossible decisions between paying for rent or ensuring the utility bill is paid to have essential lighting and heating. But there is another path, one where we all can flourish. Revising this draft IRP to center the interests of ratepayers marks a crucial first move in this process. Thank you.
Energy Specialist for the City of Missoula. On behalf of the city, I would like to share a following statement from Mayor Davis. The City of Missoula values the opportunity to provide feedback on NorthWestern Energy's 2026 Integrated Resource Plan. The final IRP will play an essential role in envisioning Montana's energy future and the energy future of our community. On behalf of Missoulians, we would like to raise a few key concerns for NorthWestern's consideration. Our biggest concern is that NorthWestern's draft IRP uses modeling that doesn't accurately consider the cost or value of renewable energy, battery storage, or transmission. Over time, investments in these technologies would be cheaper for Montanans, healthier for Montanans, less harmful to Montana's landscape, and more sustainable. Specifically, we are concerned that NorthWestern's draft IRP doesn't consider investments in transmission infrastructure as a way to meet capacity needs. Includes interconnection and network upgrade cost estimates that are significantly higher than those estimated by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory for our state, and significantly higher than the costs estimated in IRPs by other utilities in our region. And the draft IRP plan imposes limits within the planning model on how much battery storage can be selected to meet capacity needs. The city is participating in NorthWestern Energy's IRP stakeholder working group, and we value the opportunity to be involved. The city's energy specialist has shared these and other concerns with NorthWestern through this process. We appreciate NorthWestern's responses to our initial feedback, and we'll consider those responses as we prepare a more detailed written comment on the draft plan. Ultimately, the Integrated Resource Plan should set the stage for securing a reliable energy future that is more affordable for Montanans and less polluting for our beautiful state. We value the opportunity for public engagement in this impactful process. Thank you.
My name is Jim Roach, R-O-A-C-H. I live in Missoula. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk on this. I've been a NorthWest Energy customer since Montana Power days, so that's a long time. I've read a lot of these IRPs, and I got to say, you guys get high marks for consistency with your love for fossil fuels. but pretty low marks for imagination and vision and awareness of what's going on in the world. In the summary, you point out that power costs on the Western energy imbalance market are expected to go down because of renewables coming online. But you also say that natural gas prices are expected to rise rapidly after 2030. So explain to me, what is the sense of investing in costly gas infrastructure when renewables are going to be cheaper? Doesn't make sense to me. Regarding other aspects of fossil fuels, NorthWestern Energy admits that the regulatory environment could have big impacts. They claim that running Colstrip till 2042 is the most reliable and cheapest option for consumers. This is due to the cost of new infrastructure, but we know, as has been said, that getting renewables online is fast and the fuel's cheap and it's clean, so let's go that way. Let's see, as well as being a NorthWestern Energy ratepayer, I'm also a hunter, I'm a fisherman, I'm a hiker and a camper, and this IRP, as everybody said, pays practically no attention to climate change. My friends who are fishing guides are really hurting. Blackfoot flows were lower than they've ever seen them last year, and everybody's competing for the same holes. They're in trouble. And we're in trouble. I try to go elk hunting when there's no snow. I mean, it's a crapshoot. It's really hard to find elk during the regular season if there's no snow. So anyways, look at our current situation. Our current snowpack is terrible. I mean, we're in trouble right now. So I think that there should be a lot more focus on renewables in your IRP. There should be more focus on energy storage. Investment in transmission should be really high on the list. Participation in regional energy markets and grid connections, that should be high on your list. And demand-side management, you ought to focus on that a little bit more. And thank you very much for hearing my comments.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback tonight. My name is Svein Newman, and I'm Missoula County's Climate Action Program Manager. Missoula County and the City of Missoula have a joint 100% clean electricity goal that encompasses NorthWestern's local service territory. And as things stand, we cannot meet that goal without partnership and leadership from NorthWestern. It is therefore disconcerting to see that NorthWestern's IRP scenarios largely select against resources like wind and solar, and that they do not anticipate meaningful emissions reductions until the 2040s. Broadly speaking, I understand that the model is not a decision-making document, and that the goal is largely to be resource neutral, that NorthWestern has a statutory obligation to develop a least cost reliable portfolio. That said, it is therefore essential that the inputs, assumptions, and parameters that inform NorthWestern's model are as accurate as possible. The county may submit more substantive written comments highlighting a handful of technical considerations, but I wanted to offer for you tonight. On accreditation, while I understand that NorthWestern is using RAP-based resource accreditation, NorthWestern's listed winter accreditation percentages for its thermal resources belie the constrained capacity that NorthWestern has historically seen during winter peaks, and assuming a higher than actual winter peak accreditation for thermal assets gives them an oversized advantage when compared to other resources. On the other side, relative to the cost of renewables, I worry that NorthWestern's assumed candidate resource costs for renewables are high. And I would encourage you to consider your cost inputs relative to NREL's ATB annual technology baseline estimates, which also provide overnighted cost figures, and broadly to Lazard's levelized cost of energy. And similarly, and perhaps relatedly, I would encourage you to consider the range of interconnection costs. By my read, the IRP embeds one set of higher-end interconnection costs into the base cost, which therefore blanketly assumes that renewables may be difficult or expensive to connect to the grid. And I understand the historic data that you're using there, But while that can be true, it is not necessarily. And the IRP itself recognizes that interconnection costs are project-specific, and FERC analyses and IRPs nationwide show that many renewable projects interconnect with modest cost. So applying these assumptions uniformly tends to bias the analysis against wind and solar by assuming limited access to lower-cost interconnection opportunities. To sort of back up a little bit, renewable resources like wind and solar are among the lowest cost new generation options available today. Our local clean electricity goals reflect community values, but they also align with the broader evidence-based trend in the power sector. Data released last autumn by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission reflects that wind, solar, and battery storage made up approximately 90% of new electricity capacity added to the American grid in the first half of last year. And I could go on, but I think I've probably got time. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. It is important, and for your work representing Montana's emissions.
I'm Mary Ellen Campbell, Emerita Professor of the University of Montana School of Business Administration. I'm a former utilities branding and communications consultant and a Montana resident. NorthWestern Energy currently enjoys a unique position in the energy business. It can be known as a progressive company with positive customer relationships, or as a staid business-as-usual organization that ignores all but its financial investors. It just depends how NorthWestern Energy refines its current plan. Montana has great potential for renewables, including wind and solar, which you know. NorthWestern Energy could choose to go forward, creating a progressive, contemporary brand for its company and its shareholders by offering safe, abundant, environmentally friendly, renewable energy. However, the current plan seems to suggest that NorthWestern Energy is looking backward for solutions to today's energy needs. It calls on increasing substantial carbon footprints, using more coal as part of the solution. More coal, as you know, comes with high social costs. A fact that the plan does not appear to discuss in detail, but which looms large over Montana residents, as you have heard tonight. High social costs, such as toxic air pollution, creating increased lung disease, including increased asthma in Montana children. High social costs of how increased CO2 impacts current challenges of climate change, and high social costs of coal extraction and transport on Montana towns, the workers, and the environment. NorthWestern Energy has the opportunity to become a leader in responsible energy development. It should not increase its dependence on coal. It should focus on reducing its substantial CO2 footprint. It should include renewables as part of its plan. If NorthWestern Energy does this, it will deliver that bright future you promise to us on all your materials. Montana customers, in turn, will be proud to become partners with NorthWestern Energy instead of being adversaries. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rokosh, R-O-K-O-S-C-H. I'm from the Bitterroot, and I have been here my whole life, and I'm here to voice concern, as many have, about the energy demands of data centers and the proposition of nuclear energy. So first I wanted to echo what was earlier mentioned, that the models you have here only go up to 1,100 megawatts for data centers, despite the fact that there are numerous letters of intent that will surpass that. So the energy sources and their supply demands, and there's also a complete negligence of renewable resources. So my primary concern is the mention of the small modular reactors. On an emissions-based argument, you try to be convincing that it is clean energy and the elimination of emissions. However, the waste left from these plants are far from clean. It is hot, toxic, full of radiation, and SMRs, particularly the new scale design you offer, is highlighted with favoritism by energy companies, highlighting that it is smaller, uses less water, but what is neglected is that few new scale SMRs are actually running, nor have they run for nearly enough time to constitute a scientific basis of safety. And the existing models actually create more waste, according to a 2022 PNAS study indicating that these models, also like other SMR models, may produce more radioactive waste per unit of energy compared to large conventional reactors, suggesting that they are likely to generate more than 1.7 to 30 times more spent fuel and radioactive waste due to greater neutron leakage and increased, more complex and harder to manage waste materials such as reflectors. I'm unaware of any company that provides for waste management, but I've known many companies to send their nuclear waste and bury it on Indian reservations or adjacent to in New Mexico and Arizona, all with no plans of maintenance despite waste needing management in perpetuity. It is egregious. Further, there's a mention of only 740 gallons of water per megawatt hour, while seemingly less than larger facilities. What standard is it to hold to something so boldly wasteful of clean cold water? That is a low bar. Further, there's no mention of the initial water needed for the cooling pool, which with the megawatt hours that you predicted in your model, that can exceed 2.5 million gallons. There is an existing lawsuit against FWP for record low rivers in Montana and mismanagement. With climate change and increased drought, proposing nuclear as you have in this plan is misleadingly represented as safe. It is irresponsible and it is dangerously costly beyond what could ever be monetized. I want nuclear to be eliminated completely from this plan. The proposition of nuclear power is the antithesis of what it means to uphold our constitutional right of maintaining and improving a clean and healthful environment in Montana for present and future generations. I find the absence of prioritizing clean resources within NorthWestern Energy's action plan disgraceful. Y'all can do much better. It is your responsibility to do better, and this is your chance to. Thank you for this opportunity.
I was born and raised in Missoula, Montana, right here. And, I learned to ice skate on Silver Lagoon by the baseball field in the valley. And every Christmas, we went sledding at the golf course every year. Things have changed in 30 years. I mean, look around. And I don't understand. Where is your urgency? The crisis is here. It is happening. Now. I'm also an architect. I specialize in attainable, sustainable design. And I studied in Oregon and in Denmark. You know what I've noticed about the design culture here is that it's really passive and stagnant. And I feel like I'm seeing that in your IRP, that design culture. We as design professionals, I'm looking at you, Mr. Electrical Engineer, we need to step up. We need to do better. People around the world are already doing it. They've been doing it for decades. So you're talking about reliability and how it's cold here and it's dark here. They are doing this in Denmark and in Scandinavia right now already. And it's working, so I'm just not buying it. I'm just not buying it that we can't do it here. I think you guys are just not trying hard enough. We need to try harder. We need to do better. Because we are losing our winters. And that is unacceptable. I'm not a parent, and I'm not going to be, but I just care about the planet just for the sake of the planet. Don't you? There are other creatures that are relying on us. There are generations that are relying on us coming down the road. And they aren't going to get to skate on even Pine View, up in the Rattlesnake. They don't even have that. And they weren't sledding this year. I know you can do better. Thank you.
Dickey. I'm a ratepayer like most everyone else in this room. First things first, I just want to make everyone aware. Front door was locked when I appeared here at 6:30. I expect another one of these in Missoula because I don't know how many people got turned away, and that's wrong. Somebody's got to make sure that door is open so I can get in. I had to call the campus police to get in this building to make my voice heard, and that is wrong. Everyone here, and you don't even need an economist to know this, that renewables and storage is the most economic way to create energy these days. And most companies try to do that. They try to create their product the cheapest way possible, right? But we have a structure in Montana where we incentivize NorthWestern to choose the most expensive production method. That's why they don't want to do solar. That's why they don't want to do renewable. Because they can pass on those expenses to us ratepayers plus 10, 20% more, right? And as long as the structure stays the same, they're going to keep choosing the most expensive methods of production of electricity. But I have an idea. We can fix this. And we can fix it this year, 2025. We have a historic opportunity. Because Black Hills Corporation is in negotiations, or maybe it's already happened, I don't know, to acquire NorthWestern, as everyone knows. And the PUC has to prove that. PUC can put some requirements on that. And what I would propose is we decouple transmission delivery from production. And we create two separate companies as a requirement of that merger. If we do that, we have a historic opportunity to create lower costs by fostering a wholesale market here. Because if we just let NorthWestern choose, your rates will be 50% higher than they are today. They're just going to keep going up. If the PUC doesn't act in the interest of ratepayers, I hope that voters might. Because if we don't decouple this and we don't change the structure, we're just going to keep incentivizing them to create things like nuclear, which is everyone knows is the most expensive method of energy production. We need to decouple it, and we need to decouple it this year. And the PUC has an opportunity to act. And if the PUC is listening, act on this now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greg Engelhart. I'm a Missoula resident. I'm an economist working in energy and resources. I know John just said we didn't need an economist to tell him something, so maybe bad timing. This was mentioned earlier, but as I was reading through the IRP, I noticed that in this lengthy public document, accompanied by this transparent process that you're trying to promote, thank you, there was a large redacted section related to data centers. What's not redacted in the document are the projections of the massive load growth and generation capacity growth that would result from these data centers, which is driven by dirty fuel sources. The document vaguely mentions economic benefits stemming from data centers, but does not meaningfully expand on those benefits. Conversely, research shows that data centers will not create a meaningful number of long-term jobs in the communities where they're being built. What they will create is increased income for the few wealthy individuals who own and operate these facilities, who, like the redactions in the document, exist only in the dark to the everyday Montanans who have foot the bill with both their dollars and well-being. Pointing to reliability concerns caused by this massive load growth creates an off-ramp to give NorthWestern an excuse to further push the transition and your own stated goals towards clean and renewable energy sources further down the road, despite the need for these sources becoming more necessary every day. I hope that you will consider both the cost of carbon and to human health that are not being adequately recognized in the IRP and your planning, and recognize the opportunity to generate benefits for the thousands of Montanans who represent your ratepayers and community, unlike the average state data center builders, through faster integration of clean and renewable energy sources. Thank you.
Before you start, the lady in the gold sweater, she will be our last speaker, unless we get through these a little quicker. But yeah, that's the plan right now. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Reggie Spalding, Spaulding. And I thank you for allowing us to comment on your proposal. And I'm going to make this super short. I just wanted to mention that you ran a model, and you solved it for low cost. And I appreciate you doing that, but what I think that you've neglected in this model is the cost of climate change. So that's what everybody's talking about here, the cost of catastrophic fires, floods, and droughts caused by the release of CO2 from burning coal and gas, the cost of the asthma that's caused and other lung diseases that are caused by the PM 2.5 that comes from burning coal. And so I would like to see you integrate some of that cost into your model. I understand that it increases complexity and uncertainty, but I would like to see what that does.
Hi, good evening. I'm Amy Sillenberg, Cilimburg, and I'm here as a Missoula resident and also as the director at Climate Smart Missoula. We are an organization, a nonprofit that's been here around 10 years, just over 10 years, working to find the climate solutions for Missoula and beyond. And we've been part of our city and community's 100% clean electricity goal, trying to reach that. This IRP is not helping. We passed that goal as a resolution in 2019, I believe, and we're not getting there because we need you, and we need you to do better. I presented some written comments that I'm not going to read here because they reiterate what just about everyone is saying here is, why not clean electricity? We know we can have it. I was thinking and reflecting here back when I was getting my master's in science over 20 years ago here at UM. I did some quantitative modeling. It wasn't about energy. It was about wildlife. But it was very clear that if you put in the wrong inputs, assumptions, and constraints into your model, you wouldn't get your advanced degree. In fact, you would get laughed off the stage. When you went to present your thesis, you would get beat up by your committee. You had to get the inputs right. And clearly we don't have the inputs right because we're not getting clean electricity when everybody else is. Not just in Denmark, but around the West, around the U.S., people are scaling up solar. It's quick, it's affordable. Solar, wind, plus storage. It's not that hard for a model to find that if you give it the option. So somehow there are biases. None of us know how your model exactly works, but I think I can speak for most people that have spoken or are here tonight. We're baffled. We're baffled that you can say that we have reliable coal when we know it's not reliable. Coal strip is not reliable. We're baffled that we're talking about nuclear and nothing else. The wind blows in Montana, the sun shines in Montana, and there is no reason it wouldn't come out in the model if you got the inputs correct. The last thing I'll just say quickly in my 1 minute is that nobody else has mentioned this, so I will mention this. Demand-side management is something that every other utility has been doing for decades or more, and you folks have been doing it, but not well. We are always NorthWestern Energy, we don't have demand-side management. That means saving energy, shaving peak load, smart meters, connected meters that talk to each other. That also can be modeled, that can be put in there, and we could use a lot less energy that could really allow us to have a livable future that does address climate, which we all have a constitutional requirement to provide for this state. Thank you.
My name is, hope I don't sound garbled, but my name is Claudia Narcisco, spelled N like in Nancy, A-R-C-I-S-C-O. I live here in Missoula, Montana. I am a customer and a producer of energy with NorthWestern Energy. I have 10 panels on my roof for 8 years, and I am astounded that I have produced like 15 megawatts of electricity. I have room for like 4 more, maybe 6 more, and I'd really like to upgrade to some of the modern technology. This past year, when we had an opportunity for a rebate, a tax credit, I wasn't able to get in on it. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. I didn't install my solar panels until I was already retired. I want to know what, I just opened it today, that 300-some page document, and I've been scanning it looking to see if there's any way that Northwest Energy will invest in my roof. Like why isn't it that I can get credits? Why isn't it that you could give me a no loan, no interest loan, or roll my expenditures somehow account for my roof? I want to expand and it's not only me, it's a lot of people. I see some places up in the Flathead, they have like a small community wind farm. I don't see any mention. Am I missing it in this document? Have you not accounted for any of these opportunities? That's all I really wanted to say. As far as the data centers, that's a whole other story. And I don't see why we even need those data centers. They're not tried and true, and we might as well just like put our head. That's a whole other story.
My name is Caitlin Pizzersha. I'm here on behalf of the Montana chapter of the Sierra Club. We are one group of many dedicated to preserving public lands, clean air, clean water, and a stable climate. And many of our thousands of members across Montana live in service territories served by NorthWestern Energy. So year after year, we attend similar meetings and hearings about updated IRPs and about the proposed rate hikes that have so often followed these plans. And we attend because we know the decisions made by NorthWestern Energy to build or contract with various generating resources have a significant impact on the energy future of our state and the overall emissions generated in Montana, along with the affordability of everyday life. We also know that NorthWestern Energy has a history of cooking the books and modeling exercises and past RFPs that follow. The Montana Public Service Commission has pointed out major flaws in previous IRPs. Even though previous plans were supposedly geared towards detailing low-cost energy options, we know that was not the end result. Ratepayers have dealt with 2 major electric rate hikes since 2023, while the CEO's salary continues to climb, now at $4.8 million a year. I hope to someday stop hearing NorthWestern Energy spokespeople repeat the lie that renewables are more costly than fossil fuels. But in the meantime, we'll keep showing up to tell you that we know better. At this point, I hope it's clear that the burden of proof is on NorthWestern Energy to demonstrate that you are approaching this 2026 plan as a good faith blueprint for proactively planning for the future, providing Montana customers with affordable, reliable, and clean power sources, and reversing a trend of overcharging ratepayers for dirty energy. So in that vein, I'll just repeat a few of the changes we need to see. First, we want to see you correct the modeling mistakes that overvalue the reliability and affordability of gas and coal, and undervalue wind, solar, and energy storage. We'd like to see an evaluation of the negative externalities associated with various resource types, including the public health cost, as others have mentioned, of exacerbating the climate crisis, and the externalities of polluting air and water that are associated with coal, natural gas, and nuclear. And we also want to see you increase your targets for energy conservation and demand-side management instead of seemingly giving up on them. And finally, we want to see a capacity value assigned to building out transmission in your modeling in the next draft. So we also ask that I appreciate you being here to listen to us. Hope to see NorthWestern Energy employees in key decision-making roles start listening to your Montana ratepayers. Thank you.
Squeeze in there.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm Steve Thompson. I'm from Flathead County. I'm a NorthWestern Energy customer. And I'm disappointed there's not one of these meetings here being held in Flathead County. I recall, I think it was 2015, Bob Rowe, CEO of NorthWestern Energy, came to Kalispell and held a public meeting, a public comment session, a Q&A session probably similar to this. I don't know if it was part of the IRP, maybe a precursor. He was talking about clean energy, the clean energy plan at the time. He was talking about climate. He was talking about decoupling. Maybe, I don't know if he talked, I can't recall if he talked about decoupling at that public meeting, but I had subsequent conversations with him when I lived in Butte about decoupling as an objective. And I perceive NorthWestern Energy is going backwards. It's very disappointing. There's so many challenges and so many opportunities ahead, and I think people have expressed it very well. And the tone and the content of what I see coming out of NorthWestern Energy is retrograde, and I'm disappointed.
Hi, everybody. I just learned about this about 3 hours ago before I showed up. And I just really want to say I appreciate my community. As we are in, late stage capitalism, we see things falling apart, and it has been for decades, since before I was born. I'm a 10-year teacher. I taught first grade for 10 years, and I want to just let you guys specifically know. Actually, I will address you. I apologize. Sorry, I'm ramped up. What I really want to say is, as a teacher for 10 years, I taught first graders primarily and kindergarten for a couple years. And I want you to know that the comments made tonight, a first grader understands. You have a responsibility to your community members, to your family members. You have a responsibility to this earth. And it's embarrassing. I recommend you find a new job. This is embarrassing. It's bad. We are in a crisis, and it is now, and you're not fooling anyone here. We know renewable energy is where the ticket. Stop gaslighting us. It's embarrassing. I know you want to get out of here at 7:30. I know I assume you're getting paid past that anyway, and I appreciate you being here and taking the time, but it's disappointing. It really is. So. I thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me cut in there. And sorry, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, that concludes the public comment session. But remember, IRP at northwestern.com. If there's anybody who did not want to come up to the microphone today or would like to make a comment after this is over, we will take those, and we'd love to see those. If you do have the sheets of paper that you're reading off of, we'd be happy to have those as well so that we can have the most, transparent and up-to-date comments that you got. So bring them on up, and we would be happy to take them. Again, we did record this, so I'm not going to say the recording is going to be perfect, but those certainly might be. Thank you for coming. This was a great turnout. We got a lot of great information from you. Thank you so much.